Hi there and welcome. This is a bit of a departure for me. You find me today in a very wet UK. You know, this week we've had in some areas more than twice the monthly rainfall in one day. So it's not really been the kind of weather to go out with my cameras. So I've had a bit of a creative void. And that can always get you down. I have on my computer a folder with some of my favourite images in, and they're images that really evoke memories. And when I have a week where I've not been that creative, I will go into that folder. I'll just have a look through those images to try and give me a bit of a pep up, a bit of inspiration. A lot of my images have been taken while I've been travelling, so there's a really eclectic mix in there, but they all bring back some great memories. I was looking through them today on the way back from London on the train, and it gave me a thought that perhaps I should share some of them with you and some of the memories that go with them. A group of those photos are from Japan, and they really leap out every time because they bring back such great memories. We've been there a couple of times, once in the summer and once in the autumn, and winter and spring are definitely on our bucket lists. Both times we've been to Japan, we've spent time both in the cities and also out in the countryside. So I thought there were too many images really to look at in one go. So what I'm going to do is split them into two parts. This first part is around the cities. The second part will be around the countryside. The aim of these videos is really just to give you a mix of perhaps inspiration. Perhaps you may want to go to Japan, and also maybe inspire you to look back through your images and see which ones bring back the best memories for you. Create a small folder of them so that when you're having a bit of a creative void, you can go into there and just rekindle your creativity. I'm sure some of you will have been to Japan. For those of you who haven't, for me the attraction for Japan was it was a slightly mystical place. It was relatively closed to outsiders until its fairly recent past, and it was that mix of modern, you know, a lot of our cameras, or most of our cameras, are designed and a lot of them built in Japan, so it's the home of consumer electronics, that modernity, but also blended with a deep history and sense of tradition. It's in the cities where the juxtaposition of modernity and history really rub up against each other. If you look at Tokyo, to give you a feel for it, it's a city of about 14 million people. If you look at the metropolitan area of Tokyo, it's 38 million people. To give you a comparator, New York and London are about 8 million people. So that, you know, Tokyo is a megalopolis by global standards. So let's get into some of the images. In this first one, this was a photograph that was taken in rush hour on a Friday night in Akihabara. And the reason I like it is I used Lightroom to adjust some of the colours, and then I used Aurora 2018 to put an HDR effect over it. But what drew me in on this was the layers of transports. You've got the roads, you've got the people rushing across the crossings in rush hour, either going out for the evening or going home. You've then got the train going across the bridge. So it gives you different layers, which for me is so much of what Tokyo does really well as a city. Whilst it's 38 million people in the metropolitan area, 14 million in the urban area of Tokyo, or the city of Tokyo, it works. They seem to divide up, you know, the underground, the subway, with the cars, with the people quite often, and then the trains, you know, bullet trains and urban trains going across at a different level. They've managed to deconflict urban living in a way that so many cities haven't managed to achieve. So it runs like clockwork. So for me, this image really was about that, evoking the Friday night rush hour. It was taken on my D800 with the 2470 f2.8 f-mount lens. Interestingly, that was the only lens I took with me to Japan. We were quite weight constrained on that trip, so I really got my kit down to just the D800 and the 2470. And I could see that there was an image here. I could see the people were crossing, and that was fairly predictable. The trains were going across at fairly regular timings, but I had to wait until the people were crossing and a train went across. This image was taken at 1/40th of a second, because I wanted to get the blur in the train, to get a bit of movement while still not having too much blur in the people crossing the road. And then I felt the HDR effect just lifted the colours and brought out the sort of spirit of Tokyo rush hour on a Friday night. So this next photo was taken in Osaka. It's a much smaller city than Tokyo. It's down to about 2.5, 3 million people. A very different feel. We were staying in Kyoto and wanted to visit Nara, which is the original capital of Japan. You'll probably know it best from the deer that roam through the city, eating anything that tourists hold out. There's a lot of temples and also gardens there. So very quiet, nice and tranquil. And we wanted to continue by train around on a loop to Osaka for dinner in the evening. And this is one of the areas with a lot of restaurants. And the thing that draws me in is the colour, the details. A lot of there's a lot of detail in this shot. So you've got the people walking across with their cases. You've got the whale hanging above. But it just draws me in with the scene. And again, it just takes me back to that moment. It's quite a lively city, lots of nightlife going on there. So a very different feel from some of the other places. It was taken again handheld, D800 2470, with a little bit of basic manipulation on the colours, the sharpening, all being done in Lightroom. So this next shot is one that's been used in a number of publications. It's one that I took while I was walking along, and I wanted to get a different view, something that was quite iconically Japanese. And I looked up, and the corner of the building above me was this symmetrical, very ornate, temple-like design, which to me epitomised Japanese architecture, or the Japanese architecture I had in my mind in that traditional space, the wood-framed buildings. I wanted to capture the symmetry of it, and I could also see that the colours with a little bit of post-production would really pop. The sky was quite blue on that day. It was taken in the middle of summer, so it was a cloudless sky. So again, the manipulation was done in Lightroom. I really used that to draw out the reds and the golds and adjust the hue of the blue in the sky to really get the feel I wanted in this image. There's a little bit of cropping and adjusting to get that symmetry, and the 16:9 crop worked best for me because it really accentuated the lines of the architecture. And it's an image I keep coming back to. It just pops out the page with the style I've chosen here. It's one that I have on my home screen of my iPhone because it's just one of those images that takes me back. So this next image was taken in Kyoto, a much smaller city, around about 1 to 2 million people, and it has a very different feel from a lot of the other Japanese cities like Osaka and Tokyo. It's again somewhere you should definitely put on your bucket list. There's a lot of temples there, the ones you see, the Golden Temple, and a lot of gardens there. So it's somewhere we went back to when we went there in autumn to see the autumn colours on the trees. This was, I think it was in the summer trip, and we were just walking through Gion, and there's lots of wooden buildings there. And one of the side roads, I saw these two ladies walking away from me, dressed in their kimonos, so quite an iconic Japanese look. If you look at it, you know where you are in the world. They were walking into the setting sun, which made it quite difficult because the image I could see was this one, the sun bouncing off of the paving stones with their shadows coming away from them. But in camera, it was a really tricky shot. They were moving away, so I didn't have long to compose and take the shot. And I knew that I'd have to use a little bit of post-production to get it right. Again, you know, this was adjusted in Lightroom, so it does show what you can achieve in Lightroom when you marry it up with the capabilities of a D800 and a good piece of glass on it. So not all photography in Japan is at the grand level, the very iconic Japanese shots. This is a bit of street photography, and I took this just outside of the Tsukiji, the old Tsukiji fish market. and it was a mechanics workshop on the corner of the street, and there was this scene playing out of the mechanic in the centre doing something on a bicycle with a spanner and his toolkit, and a couple of gentlemen, one obviously works in the market, possibly giving him some advice, and this second gentleman on the left who's wearing his boots, so I'm guessing he worked in the market as well. And you can almost hear the dialogue going on between them, with them offering advice in trying to repair what is a very simple bicycle in a very high-tech city like Tokyo. I had one chance at this as they were all focused on the bicycle in the centre. Again, I've used Lightroom to put a different feel on it. I wanted a slightly more faded cinematic feel. If you do go to Japan, I'd urge you to spend some time in these cities. It is one half of what Japan is about. You get a real insight into the modern day Japan. It is quite an eclectic experience. On our second trip, we wanted to spend a weekend in Tokyo, and one of the reasons we wanted to spend a weekend in Tokyo was to get a feel for what people who live in Tokyo get up to at the weekend. So if you're there over a weekend and you're there on a Sunday, one of the things you can do is go to one of the big department stores, go into the basement where they have their food courts, most amazing food, buy a picnic, and go up to Yoyogi Park. It's where a lot of people who live in Tokyo go on a Sunday, and you get everything from Tokyo rockabilly groups having dance-offs to, my favourite was a skateboarding dog. I hope you've enjoyed this quick curated tour of Japanese cities. Maybe it's inspired you to go to Japan on a future trip, or maybe it's inspired you to set up a folder on your computer and put some images in there that really bring back some great memories for you when you've got a creative void. Let me know in the comments below what you think about this style of videos. It is a bit different to the ones I've done before. Would you prefer more detail about the technicalities of how I took the photos, or would you be interested in a greater breadth of photos to give you inspiration about places to go? It's brought back some great memories for me, so it's been great to share them with you, and I look forward to seeing you on part 2 of this video